The Torah portion is named after Yitro, the father-in-law of Moshe, but it contains like probably the most famous of all the Torah, which is the Ten Commandments, the 10 words, you know. So it's surprising that it's called Yitro instead of like the 10 Commandments or something, you know. But you know, in the Hebrew, they just grab the first unique word, and that's what they name the portion. So in Exodus 20, verse 1 and 2, it says, God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord, I am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. So the pashat of that is, it's the very beginning. Some people, some scholars have said that, most Hebrew scholars have said that that's the first of the 10 words. But over the years, it's kind of that became not the first. That's just kind of like the intro type of thing. But in I guess in most of our sages, they say that that's the first beginning of the 10 words. You know. So we have the 10 words, the 10 commandments, Aseret Hadevarim, the 10 words, or Aseret Hadibarot, the 10 pronouncements. Very important, right? And so this in the beginning, it's saying, I am your God. I created you, essentially. I'm the one who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So I'm the one who did this stuff. Then the sages have something to say about this. So they say, how were the 10 pronouncements or 10 words arranged? They say there were 5 on one tablet and 5 on the other. Thus, on one tablet was written, I, the Lord, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. Opposite it, on the other is written, you shall not murder. So it's splitting the two, the 5 on one and 5 on the other. And this informs us that if one sheds blood, it is accounted as if one had diminished the image of God. This can be likened to a human king. When he enters a city, they erect portraits and images and mint coins in his likeness. After a while, they upset his portraits, break his images, and deface his coins, thus diminishing the likeness of the king. Thus, if one sheds blood, it is counted as if one had diminished the image of God. As it is said, whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. For in his image did God make him. It's in Genesis 9, verse 6. So it's interesting, this Midrash about the 10 words being on 2 separate tablets, and then 5 being on one tablet and 5 being on the other tablet. I think it was only mentioned by one sage. It was the opinion of one sage, Rabbi Hananiah, son of Gamliel. And most of the sages said it was 10 on one and 10 on another, so that you will have a copy. So one it would be kind of like when you make a contract, each person each of the 2 people that were in the contract have a copy of it, right? But yet this one opinion has been adopted by all of Judaism, because they see the beauty of it. They see this connection. If you ever watched on Aleph Beta, Rabbi Foreman gives a beautiful connection analogy to all these commandments and shows how each one connects. It's really neat. About an hour long, I think, but it's worth it. So if you have time to go watch that on Aleph Beta, I would recommend it. And I guess that has come from Rabbi Hananiah, son of Gamliel, that these ideas come from him. So, and so what it really teaches us, at least these first 2 commandments, this first and 6th commandment teaches us how we are made in the image of God, and how life is sacred, essentially. How we need to, I guess, respect the gift of human life. you know, and respect how important it is to Hashem and how it reflects on Hashem. You know? And so all human beings are to be treated with dignity, and human life is to be considered not only valuable, but sacred. So then Rabbi Hammer goes into his own personal connection with it when he said when he visited Poland and saw all the terrible things that happened there with the Holocaust, how sad it was. And also he said it's kind of ironic that the people who brought the idea of sacred life, of life is sacred, human life is sacred, were the ones that were treated with the least dignity of their lives. You know, they were the ones who were you know, murdered. You know, essentially murdered, like the sixth commandment. You know, and also how like the people, you know, how the Germans were like supposed to be like the top, you know, the most educated, the most smart, you know, have all the great ideas and everything, and yet they're the ones who debased the Jew as being less than human. You know, it's like it's kind of insanity, but yet we still see this kind of ideas, these kind of strange ideas in our world today. You know? So, you know, he was trying to connect them all together, and you know, he realized these two important lessons that we learned from the Shoah. First, we must never let this happen to us again. That's the first lesson, of course. And the second is we must always fight against the concept that humans can be divided into superior and inferior races. So we cannot never think of like this human is better than this human. You know, that we are all made in the image of Hashem, and we are all have equal value. You know, and so we must think. You know, we must remember. We must reject any of those kind of beliefs and affirm the sacredness of all human life. We must never permit the image to be diminished. The image of Hashem to be diminished. And so these are the lessons that we learn, at least from that first and that last commandment. May we continue, may we remember, you know, remember, we never forget what happened. May we always put human life sacred above all other life. And you know, if you have time, go to Aleph Beta and watch that video about the commandments connection between the various commandments. It's very, very interesting. It's very good. I can't remember all of them, but I should go watch it again too, because it's very nice, very deep, super deep. So that's all I have today. About Shalom, everybody. You have something to share?
On top of that, I think there's a new teaching on Aleph Beta that we hadn't seen it that actually shows how I don't know if it's all the 10 commandments, but at least the first 5 were pulled from. Well, they have the same words as Moshe's objections to going to Israel when he was in Egypt. You know, yeah, interesting. And so in this portion, you know, we get this saying that is sussed out more actually probably before the Israelites go into Canaan, you know, pre-Israel. But and that's the phrase of, you know, the Mamleket Kohanim, to be a nation of priests. But here it says Goy Kadosh, the holy nation. Later on, Moshe says that you're a nation of kings and priests. But you know, this brings the question: what exactly is a priest, right? I mean, obviously, I think everybody usually relates it to after Torah is given and the Kohanim, like the Levitical priesthood, is established, our own sons. But we have certain passages where, even in this one in particular, Yitro is called the Midianite priest, right? And we've got Melchizedek, but from before, who says he's a priest to God, king of Salem. And, you know, it begs the question as to if that's pre-Torah, what does it really mean, you know? Okay. So what's usually This commentary by Sachs, it says that a priest is, in one aspect, a priest is one who's consecrated to the service of God. And that's a general, the obvious. But some other commentators, like Saadia Gaon, Rashi, and Rashbam, understand it to mean princes. And actually, in the Chabad translation online, that's what they actually put there, as a nation of princes. And that's based off of 2 Samuel 8:18, in which David's sons are described as Kohanim, which obviously in that context with them cannot mean priests, but it must mean royalty, noblemen, or princes. Since God is the supreme King of Kings, and he has described Israel as my son, my firstborn child, it follows that Israelites were children of the king and royalty. And then a very interesting suggestion from Saforno, the great Italian commentator. He interprets it to mean that Israelites stand in relation to the rest of the world and humanity as the children of Aharon stood vis-a-vis the Israelites. So in the same ways that the Kohanim were set up, the Levitical priesthood was set up to serve the Israelites, so is all of Israel called to serve the world. And so they are, in essence, the world's priests. I think the best example of that, an easy one to pull from, is Sukkot, where all the bull sacrifices that Israel ends up making ends up being 70, and it's really for the nations, for the 70 nations. And actually, Sachs marks, it's notable that Saforno says this in the Italian Renaissance, where the Italian Renaissance was such a huge reformation for Judaism, if not the biggest, where Judaism interacted with the culture and the world around it and had such an impact. So then Sachs brings this view on top of it. He says his own interpretation, where he brings up the fact of innovation and essentially technology, where basically, you think of the Gutenberg press, where it was the thing that launched Martin Luther's teachings and writings all across Europe, all across, it exploded. And the fact is, though, that Martin Luther actually wrote all that stuff 200 years before. It was the press that caused everything to explode and to have the impact that it did. And so then he starts going back and saying, think about the innovation that writing was, where you have, 5,000 years before in Mesopotamia, you have writing established, where before it's communication, oral communication. You have to develop a system so that people can together look at this, and helps bring unity and a new level of communication. And so then when you really think about the giving of Torah, you think that we're going from now something that's been orally understood, orally transmitted through a few people, and now you got a whole encounter with a nation, with a ton of people. I mean, this was what, at least 600,000, but some people say 3 million with the mixed multitude and things. And you have now something that's given in a system of writing. I mean, heck, we're trying to go back and understand Hebrew more and more. And I think this made me go, wow, I need to set more time into really comprehending and understanding more the depth in Hebrew. But this system that we're given to essentially do this. And there's it talks about, I don't know if this is Mishnah or Talmud, where it says that there's 3 crowns. One crown of the priesthood, one crown of, I think, kingship. What? Let me see. Kingship and priesthood, but greater is the crown of Torah. And they quote Proverbs where, Proverbs is speaking like as the Torah, and it says, but by me, kings reign and princes decree justice, and by me, princes rule. And so it follows that, the crown of Torah is greater than every crown. And so, I take this as a huge thing to go. I think it's simple. I mean, today, now we have so much technology, we have so many things. I think as to become and to step into that role of essentially the princes and the priests and the consecrated to God, it's like focus on those aspects, the consecration, focus on the, what was the second thing it said? Focus on the aspect of relating to the world and trying to spread the unity of God, Judaism, whatever your focus is, but have the impact with the world and rapport, which I think is very lacking in the Jewish world right now. And then on third, really to see the innovations and the concepts that are before you that you can utilize. And I think a lot of them are probably staring at you in the face that you don't think of because you're too focused on what the world sees of them. Blockchain, Bitcoin, crypto, all these things that they have so much potential. And, let alone websites and things and whatever the case is, social media, to utilize in the service of God in some aspect. But just encourage everybody to, really to try to focus more on what I'd say is, in some ways Jewish outreach and have impact on the world around them. So, Shabbat Shalom.
So I have a superpower called bipolar disorder. And what happens is I have these huge bouts of energy, and I can thrive on very little sleep and get tons of work done. And then when I got sick a few weeks ago, the superpower left me, and I needed a normal 8 hours of sleep every single day for a long time. But last night, my superpower came back to me, and I woke up at like 2 or 3 in the morning or something. And I was like, I have so much energy right now. And so I went and studied the Torah and my trope and everything. So I have this awesome insights to share now. Okay, so it's very interesting when you look at the Hebrew. It says first of all, when it starts in verse 20, that's the portion that I trope, it says, in this Bible, it says Hashem, but it doesn't say that. It says in the Hebrew, it says Elohim. Elohim kol hadevarim. And so it says, it uses the impersonal name of God, Elohim. And it's what in Kabbalah, it's known as the impersonal force, the judgment aspect of God. And that's how it starts. So it's giving like this like legal groundwork for the 10 words. So it doesn't call them commandments anywhere here. In the 10 commandments, it calls them words, hadevarim. And in Judaism, it's called Aseret Hadibrot, which means the 10 words. And this word davar, it doesn't really mean word like as in a word, like a single word. It's more like a word as like, let me give you a word of advice. Like it's an idea, not just a single word. It's an idea. It can also mean a thing, like a matter or a thing. Okay, so he's saying Hashem spoke these things, these words, these matters. And then the very next verse, it says, Anochi Yod Hevavhe. So then it goes in and it gives his personal name. So he starts off with a very impersonal title for God, Elohim. Then it goes into his personal name. And so as the lawgiver, the very first word in Judaism, not in the Christian 10 Commandments, I am Hashem your God who brought you out of Egypt. It's just a prelude, right? But in Judaism, this is the first word. It is the first statement, not a commandment, but it establishes why we should keep the rest of the words, right? The authority. I am Hashem your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. Now they say in Judaism that there's a Midrash that says that Hashem tried to give these commandments to all the nations, but only only Israel accepted them, right? And then, so that's very interesting. But here it says, I brought you out of Egypt. I'm your personal God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Okay. And then it says, have no other gods besides me. Now, another thing that, a lot of people kind of get mixed up is Elohim. Elohim, it's translated as a singular word when it refers to the God of heaven, but the same word Elohim, it's actually plural form. And I think the best definition for the word Elohim is to say powers or mights or, forces. And when we say Elohim, referring to our God in heaven, it's what we're saying is all powers and all forces and all might is actually from this one source. Even as a plural form, it seems like multiple powers, this president, this king, this hurricane, this tornado, they all seem like many different powers working in our universe, but actually it's only one Elohim. There's only one God that really controls all of these things. Okay, so don't have any other gods. And the Hebrew there, when it says besides me, it means before my face. So nothing before me. There may be other powers in this world, but there's nothing that comes before me, right? Before my face. Nothing can stand in my presence. Then it says, I'm going to skip down. It says here about not bowing down to idols, and he says that he visits the iniquity of the parents upon the children, the third and fourth generations, to those who hate me, right? And then later on it says, but I shows kindness to the thousandth generation of those who love me, but he doesn't stop at love me. He also says, and keep my commandments. And so I think it's very interesting because there's a lot of religions that profess love for God, but who keeps God's commandments, right? That's very few, okay? And then another thing that I wanted to point out, one more thing is when it says, oh, do not take my name in vain. So this word take, I can't find it right now. Where is it? Verse 7, chapter 20, verse 7. It says here, you shall not swear falsely in this specific Bible, but the Hebrew there is tisa, which means to lift up and carry. But actually, the more literal interpretation of this verse is, do not carry my name in vain. Now, I know there's different interpretations of this, but I like this one that I heard from Dennis Prager, which is that we are not to carry God's name in vain, which means that we're not to bear his name, whether it be as a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, and then do evil things. Because we're like, that's when we're bearing his name, we're like wearing it as a banner. Oh yes, I'm a Jew, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, I'm a follower of God, I submit to Allah, whatever, and you're killing people and you're murdering people and you're being horrible to people. That this is the most, of course there's other applications of this verse, but I think that is the most important application that I've ever heard, is when we bear his name that way and do horrible things. And we show, when we do that, like when we do that to our children, our family, we're showing our children that I don't want that God, and we do that to other people, that I don't want that religion, when we do those kinds of things.
Well, see, Alpha Beta, I think they draw the correlation, between the first five and the second five, with that, with do not steal. Then Alpha Beta draws the correlation with that and with do not steal, because there is, an aspect of carrying, and it's like carrying off, stealing the name of God to a certain degree. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so.
Stealing his reputation.
Yeah.
Okay, and then another thing is very interesting that I saw is where it says about honor your father and your mother. Now, I know there's the whole thing of you should honor your father and mother, like literally you should do that. But it's very interesting that when it says here that you may long endure on the land that Hashem your God is assigning to you or giving to you. And we all know that this is talking about Israel, right? But another thing is that it says noten lach. This is the only time it does this that I can remember in this whole chapter. Usually it says lecha, which means to you, but here it's saying to you feminine. And the only application of the feminine that I can understand here is it's because it's speaking to Israel as a nation. And so it's saying, I believe there's a deeper meaning than just honor your earthly mother and father. I believe this is talking about honoring your spiritual mothers and fathers, meaning Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, so that as a nation, because it's talking about the nation of Israel, so that I will give you as a nation the land of Israel, because it's saying you feminine, and that's nation is a woman. So to me, that doesn't, it's so abnormally written that I feel like that is more, I think, the actual meaning, really, than to just honor your earthly parents. Of course, it also means to honor your earthly parents. So.
Do you like honoring mother and father
Yeah. I think it's about tradition too. She's saying to like the male and female aspects of Hashem. And they also say that, male and female, he created them. So without both male and female, it's not an accurate representation. But we were just reading that in the Women's Wisdom book that we're studying together as a group. If you guys want to get on that, it's Women's Wisdom. It's by Shalom. We're reading through that as we have a signal chat. Anyways, it's supposed to be chapter 8. Okay, and one more thing that I wanted to say, very interesting. And I noticed that in Jewish Bibles, verse 13 is one verse, but then when I was looking at a Christian Bible, each of these commandments were separate. It was verse 13, 14, 15, 16, but in Jewish Bibles like this and on Chabad, there's 2 Bibles now, they're all verse 13. And so I was reading Rash's commentary, and he was saying that the two of them are together because they are related. How are they related? And he said it's because they are both punishable by capital punishment. So it's you shall not murder and you shall not commit adultery. So both of those, according to the Torah, are punishable by capital punishment. But then there was another comment that also said that, you shall not steal. There's some of the sages say that this is not talking about stealing things, but it's actually talking about kidnapping, which is great because I have never seen anything about kidnapping before in the Bible until this. So it's saying, because it already says elsewhere, do not steal, elsewhere in the Bible, in the Torah, actually. So it's saying this is referring to do not steal. And I think it goes along with the previous thing that Rashi said, because from what I remember, kidnapping is also a capital crime, punishable by death. And then we have also, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And in Judaism also, I believe the halachah is that if you stand before, so of course, we shouldn't lie, but I think this is more than just that. This is more than just that. It's about when you stand in a court of law and you bear false witness, and if, let's say, someone is on trial for murder, and as a false witness, you say that, yes, I saw him murder someone. Well, according to Judaism, your punishment for bearing false witness is the punishment that you intended to give to him, because in a way you were like, you're trying to be complicit in his murder, right? And so they're all together because they're all capital crimes. So I thought that was very interesting that it was grouped that way. And that's all I have. Okay. No, right. So in the American system, adultery is not punishable at all, right? Not anymore. And then kidnapping, there's people that kidnap people and they get off after just a few years. It's terrible. And then what else? Bearing false witness. If you're a false witness, nothing happens to you. Is there a punishment for being a false witness?
I want to. Yeah, perjury in jail, and it's more severe if it's involved like a military trial or something. There's perjury, and it can be way more severe if it's a military trial. But I want to say that a lot of these laws actually started probably more punishable, like when they first were founded, because a lot of our founding fathers were actually fluent in Hebrew and Greek, and they knew the Bible, and they actually knew some Talmud and everything. So the U.S. system actually is pretty based off of the Jewish system.
It's not punishable by death, no. But it is punishable by prison time. And adultery in most states is also a crime. Adultery in most states is still on the books as a crime. It's not really enforced. In the military, it is. In the military, if you're an officer and you mess around with somebody else's wife, you're going to jail.
Jail. She said jail and death is kind of different. Eat and study for free in jail.
There's a story of fiction stories where there's a guy who has like $1 million. He has like a lot of money, right? And at the time he tells somebody, I don't know. Winyan's comment of going to jail so she can study. I was like, there's an old story of a very rich guy who had a lot of money, and him and a poor guy made a deal where he says, I guess he volunteered and said, I'll spend 10 years in like a room, like a prison type thing, but like I'll spend 10 years, and he's like, if you make the 10 years, then I'll give you $1 million type of thing. So the time goes by, and he's feeding him every day, and the guy does the whole thing, and he's asking for books. He gets books, and he basically goes the entire 10 years, and he studies, and he comes out, and the millionaire by that time is poor because he's spent all his money feeding this guy, and obviously the way it goes. But the guy comes out and he says, it's okay because the 10 years I spent studying and learning all these different topics and things are like worth more, yeah, than all that.
Worth more than $1 million. Mm-hmm.
It actually makes a kind of, like severing your relationship with Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
There's a severing of your relationship with your spouse. That kind of death, and it surely happens, whether you are punished by law or not.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Murder. Yeah, murder.
Yeah,
was
so
always...
we're like, so well, if it is law changed, then we now live in a society that these behaviors seemingly have no consequences. It's very hard, right? But they explain that the consequences are surely there, and it's so that the death expresses itself differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard in California they're trying to pass a law to take away parenthood and make children wards of the state. California's going crazy. To make them wards of the state. They want to take away parenthood. They've done that in Soviet Union and China.
It's communism. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, kibbutz is voluntary. It's different. It's voluntary communism. No, you live there. You live there. Kibbutz, you live there. You do it to live in a community too, and to share resources and stuff. Yeah, Yishai was about to join a kibbutz in Israel, and it was this company. They made bomb shelters. They made bomb shelters for different countries, and so they were very wealthy, and it was very communistic. Like you were assigned a place to live, and you were assigned a job, but they were very good people. So they were, they were godly people. So they would. It was good communism.
Good communism.
It's all based on distortion and deception.
Mm.
It is large-scale brainwashing. It's really through education also.
Mm-hmm. But the children don't choose even when they're your kids too. They still don't choose. No. No.
Those festivals are like everything like assembly of believers, but everything is common.
I think even in modern Orthodoxy, there's a sense of when the kids go to school, at least when they get maybe into like high school age, they kind of go off to like a yeshiva. Yeah, they're not really at home. Sometimes, I mean, my friend I was just talking to you on work, and he moved to Israel when he was 2, and then he went to yeshiva in the U.S. It was far away from his family, right? But I guess they trusted that he would be in an environment that would still raise him, be a good influence on him.
For the best.
Mhm.
Oh, is this working? No, it's just, when for some of my family, when I tell them Christine is homeschooling, right? They get like crazy. They look at me like, what are you doing? Like, why do you do that to your daughter? Like, this is insane. Like my brother, he was really like, this is crazy, because he believes that you should not educate your
Own
kids.
children.
No, like you should send them to. You should not keep them home and teach them, because he feels like that's doing harm to the child. For sure, he's convinced about that. And I tried. Yeah, I tried to explain him, but he doesn't understand. Like he's so into it. But my mom, she's like, oh, I pray the Lord. Like, I'm so happy she's not going to school. For so many reasons. Like maybe not because yes, my mom. But all that to say that there are some people that they truly believe it's a good thing to send them, and for some people that may be good. Like I know, like there's some environments that are not good for kids at home. I don't have that issue. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah. And there's always like, the really bad kid that you can't straighten them out, and you send them off to like military school or something to get them, You're like military school though. No.
They basically they have a lot of money. They pay $25,000 a year. They end up doing
So it sounds like a good idea, but it's not.
Their morals go down, but their discipline is up.
All right.
Continue. We'll turn to page 77 for Psalm 145. Page 77. Tehillah leDavid, Eromimcha Elohai Hamelech, Barav Racha Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed, B'chol Yom Avrakecha, Ba'ahala Shimcha Le'olam Va'ed, Gadol Adonai Halom Me'od, V'ligdulato En Keker, Dor leDor Yasabak Ma'asecha, Ugurataka Yagidu, Hadar Kevod Odecha, Nivameli Patecha Asika, Vezus Noreteka Yomeru, Ugdulataka Asaprena, Zecherav Tucha Yabiu, Vezitachecha Nenenu, Hanun verachum Adonai, Narech apayim ugdal chesed, Tov Adonai lakol, Rachamav akol ma'asav, Yoduka Adonai kol ma'asecha, V'chasidecha yerechucha, Kavod malchutecha yomeru, Ugvuratecha yadaberu, L'di eliva de Adam gevrotav, Ugvod hadar malchuto, Malchut malchut kol olamim, Numem shotecha bechol dor vador, Somek Adonai lechol hanoflim, Vezokef lechol hakefupim, Ene kol elecha yesaberu, Ve'ata noten lechem b'atem beito, Poteach et yadecha, Umatzbiya lechol karatzon, Tzadik Adonai bechol derechav, V'chasid bechol ma'atzav, Karov Adonai la'kol kore'av, L'chol asher yikra'u be'emet, Ratzon nira'av yaseh, Ve'et Shabbatam yishma yoshiem, Shomer Adonai kovav, Ve'et kol shma'im yashmid, Tela Adonai yadaber pi, Yivarek kol basar Shem kodsho le'olam va'ed. All right. And Seder Hayom on page 82. A Redeemer will come to Zion and unto those of Yaakov who turned from transgression, says Hashem. And as for me, this is my covenant with them, says Hashem. My spirit that is upon you and my words that I have placed in your mouth shall not depart from your mouth, nor out of the mouth of your seed, nor out of the mouth of your seed, says Hashem, from this moment and forevermore. You are the Holy One, enthroned on the praises of Israel. And one called to another and said, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzebaot, Melo kol haaretz kevodo. Holy, holy, holy is Hashem of hosts. All the earth is filled with his renown. They receive permission from each other and say, Holy in the heavens on high, home of his presence. Holy on the earth, the work of his power. Holy, transcending all time. This is Hashem of hosts. The whole world is filled with the radiance of his glory. Then a wind lifted me up, and I heard behind me the voice of a great rushing. Baruch kevod Adonai mi mekomo. Blessed is the glory of Hashem from his abiding place. And a wind lifted me up, and I heard the sound of a great movement behind me of one's praising, saying, Blessed is the glory of Hashem from the place of the home of his abiding presence. Hashem shall reign forever and ever. The dominion of Hashem is eternally established forever. And the Mishaberach on page 85. When I say bless the sick, say the name out loud. May the one who blessed our fathers and our mothers, Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, may he bless the sick.